welcome back to the 10th episode of Unfiltered Perspectives. I'm Tara.
I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Leslie.
Thank you all for joining us for this part 2 of our discussion on building strong partner relationships. Last week, we spent some time talking about the challenges we face in relationships, the things we don't like, and what we and our partners often do or did wrong. This week, let's shift gears a little to focus on the positive actions we can take to draw us closer and to make us feel more secure in our partner relationships. Today, we are going to hopefully look at some practical steps and behaviors that build connections, trust, and intimacy. So whether you are looking to strengthen a new relationship or rekindle the spark in a long-term relationship, these insights will hopefully help build a deeper, more fulfilling bond. Remember, at Unfiltered Perspectives, real talk leads to real growth, and every perspective is valued.
As always, Tara, you give us a great introduction into the topic, and I can't wait to see what I'm going to learn from you ladies today, because I may need help in this area. So, again, I'm going to throw it back at one of you ladies to get us started. And with the rest of the listeners, I am all ears.
Okay, so if we are trying to think of some things that we can do to make our relationships more positive, is that we should probably be focusing on effective ways to communicate. And in those effective ways to communicate, one of the major things that I like to think about is something called active listening, where we really try to hear what our partner has to say and really try to maybe put ourselves in their position, just different ways to do that so that we can learn how to express what we need to express how we feel, express what we want or are looking for in a way that gets across our message and tells people what we need, but without criticism. Because I think once criticism enters into the picture, we're putting up a wall, or we're drawing maybe not putting up a wall, but definitely drawing a line in the sand. So the person's initial reaction would be to be on the defensive. And when you're on the defensive, you're not really approaching a conversation with an open mind, because then you're gearing up for a fight.
So how do you balance not criticizing with being honest and clear about what you're observing or what you're needing?
And then also, too, to add to that, when you introduce a conversation, introduce a topic, I don't think that we intend to do it in a way that comes off as criticizing. So now you're tiptoeing around a topic because that other person really feels attacked or criticized. And then we end up not resolving the problem, not talking about the issues. And now everyone is silent. Both parties are silent because it seems like there is no resolution. You can't even get the conversation started because the person is already defensive, and you be extra, extra careful. You don't even know how to approach the situation.
I think one of the easiest ways to do that is and sometimes I have difficulty with this, but before you even start talking or letting words come out of your mouth, you think about what it is you're going to say. You don't initially just come out with guns blazing. You start off in a respectful way and be mindful, because people don't automatically, well, maybe people do, I don't know, they expect criticism to flow. But if you start off the conversation probably with statements like talking about what you feel or what you need versus what they are doing wrong or what they're not providing for you. And so one of the things that I learned somewhere along the way are to use I statements. And so that puts the focus on you without attacking or criticizing the other person.
So do you mean For instance, I will say what I understand you to mean, or correct me if I'm wrong, or it appears to me. Is that what you mean? Statements like that?
I don't, because that kind of sounds accusatory in my head. When I say
Mm.
I statements, what I mean is, instead of saying something like, "But I understand you to say," or that could work depending on like the tone and stuff. But a lot of times people hold me, "You never listen to me," that kind of thing. And instead of saying something like that, you could say like, "I feel unheard."
That's
Just
what,
talk about, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. I've tried that. I try that and it works sometimes.
Hmm.
And just trying to be clear in stating that just this is what I hear you saying, or this is how I understood what you said,
Hmm.
or this is what I'm getting from what you said or what you did. I try to open the door for clarity.
Hmm.
So in that case, they can respond by saying, well, no, what I meant was,
Hmm.
or confirming that I am right in what I'm thinking. Just anything to soften the blow.
The two things, I think you both are saying two really different things, both useful, but to me have a different purpose, right? So the I statement, for me, I see that purpose as to express what I'm feeling, right? I feel angry when you do this. I feel hurt when you do this. I usually also really try and think about feelings. So if I'm expressing my feelings, right, I'm saying I statements. I'm not making assumptions about why you're doing something or what you mean when you're doing something or whether or not I'm a priority when you're doing something, but I'm expressing how I feel. I also hear what you, Leslie, saying is around having a common understanding, right? So if my goal is us having a common understanding of what's happening, which is
Mhm,
slightly different than me
mhm,
expressing my feeling, right? I'm hearing you say, I think I probably say this a lot. I hear you saying XYZ. I'm
mhm.
understanding you to be saying, and there's your opportunity to say, no, actually,
Right.
actually what I mean is this,
Hmm.
or which are both useful to me, but slightly different. And like, what's the purpose of this? Is it about telling you how I feel, what I see, or is it about us coming to a common understanding?
Right. Okay.
One of the things that I feel like, even before you get to that point, we should be understanding what we mean when we're talking about active listening. So by actively listening, what we're talking about is being fully present in a conversation, actually listening and concentrating on what the other person is saying without interrupting them, without planning what it is that you want to say to in your next parry sort of way. Just giving full, I think, attention to what it is the person is trying to express without paying half attention to what they're saying, because you're also in your own head thinking about what comes next. And part of the way of doing that is, I know a lot of times when we are feeling, I don't really know how to say this. I know sometimes when I'm angry, when I'm upset about something, I have a lot of difficulty even staying present in the room, for one thing, but also just to sit down and have a conversation so that the person understands that we're here for a conversation, not to fight, not to be on opposite sides of a thing, is to that connection that we have where we're like just looking at each other. You're not like using your phone or watching TV while the person is trying to have a conversation, but you're actually there with each other, eye contact, that kind of thing.
Just knowing that the person is attentive and they're paying attention.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So, and I think that sometimes that gets lost when we may be feeling a certain way, even about having a conversation with our partner. Things like when the person is speaking, letting them finish their thought, letting them get out what it is they want to say without interrupting them, trying to make your excuse or trying to explain why you did a certain thing, trying to explain how you feel in that moment, because right then, when that person is speaking, it's about them and it's about you receiving what it is that they're trying to relay in the conversation.
But how am I supposed to win if I'm not spending time preparing my rebuttal? Which is
Exactly.
just
Because
a
we
joke.
don't want, because I know there should not be a win or lose. It should be win-win because we're coming to a unity of minds.
But I also think so. We're talking about relationships like once there is some kind of conflict, or it seems as if once there is some kind of conflict, I think there are also lots of things that we can do to keep ourselves in tune with our partners, even before we get to this point of conflict, right?
Yeah.
Like taking time, like setting aside time
Hmm.
to spend with each other, things like that.
Hmm. Absolutely. I think that that comes in when we're talking about, in addition to communication, there is that part where we want to make sure that our partners are secure, that we're secure, and that requires trust, that requires appreciation, that requires spending time together, sharing experiences, being supportive, whether you're talking just emotion, not just emotionally, whether you're talking emotionally supportive, supportive of their goals, supportive of their endeavors, just so that you're acknowledging that you're both on the same page. And if you aren't on the same page, communication and is one of the ways that you can get there.
When you talk about spending time together and just, acknowledging where a person is and all of those things that go along with being in a relationship, I find it hard to separate those things. At least for me now, it's really hard to enjoy time with you, to laugh with you, to do all those things that are supposed to be enjoyable. Back of my mind, there's this one thing that we can't resolve, and that's all I can focus on. It's hard to put that aside to enjoy anything else when that thing may be small to him, but it's big to me. How do you still show up in a relationship when you have this communication issue?
Work on the communication issue. If you're trying to have a conversation or if you want that relationship to be positive, then you can't, and I know it's hard to say, but you can't go in there thinking, well, I have this in the back of my head and I'm not going to get past it. You have to work on getting past it, whatever that takes. And most of the time, a lot of times what that takes is to actually talk about it and not hold on to grudges or being upset because the person doesn't see things in the same way that you see things. Figure out what the difference is and why there is a difference and figure out or work to figure out how you can I don't necessarily want to use the word compromise because compromise implies that, there's a give and take, some win, some loss, but come to a meeting of the minds, figure out where things went awry, maybe, and have a conversation about why that is.
So I think
Mm.
there are two things, right? I think I'm hearing on one hand communication, but I'm also hearing like I think what I hear Leslie saying is not necessarily about communication, but it really is about being able to let go of anger or let go of grudges, which is not necessarily about communication. So I think at some point we have to be able to forgive. Well, we don't have to, right? I think I would encourage
No.
people to, but I think if we
Trust.
want a relationship to work, we have to be able to forgive and let go. And I think that we have some sense, like some internal sense of, are there things that are unforgivable, right? Then I'm not going to ask somebody to forgive on that. But if there are things that are forgivable, right, needing to be able to forgive. Also, like, I think having a sense in a relationship of which differences in terms of ways of doing things, but even like differences of opinion on things that are big or potentially things that are small or potentially things that are big, right? Is this a difference that makes us more interesting together? Is this a difference that brings some like creativity into the relationship, or is this a difference that really pulls us apart? I mean, I have a pretty strong commitment to anti-racism, right? I don't, I could not be in a relationship with a partner who didn't have a similar commitment. That's a difference that would pull us apart. It's not necessarily the case that I couldn't be in a relationship with somebody who votes differently than I do. I could conceive of a relationship where we vote differently. We have some core values that we share, but how we see us getting to those core values is different. And that kind of difference makes us more interesting and creative. But then there's some other values that if we don't share them, they're going to pull us apart.
Yes, I think that what you're saying is absolutely correct. Although I don't see very many relationships where you have such core differences. It's when you're talking about, let's say, the values of anti-racism, how you get to a point where you're in a relationship where you're trying to build that when you don't share that in the first place, unless it came as a complete surprise and somebody was like lying or something. I don't know. You talk about forgiveness. That is, I think, part of the whole trust and security thing, because when you have something like that, like Leslie talked about, where that you have this thing that happened or this thought or whatever that's stuck in your head and you can't get rid of it. We know that forgiveness is necessary. We know that we have to move past whatever that is, mistakes or events or whatever, but that's not something that just automatically happens. It's not going to just automatically happen. I can't think of a situation where it would happen where unless a conversation was had, you know what I mean? I don't see forgiveness without communication. I don't see how you get there. I also think that in a relationship, it's really difficult to maintain or have a strong relationship, build a strong relationship, unless there is a level of trust where you know that you can share your thoughts, you can share your feelings, your ideas openly with your partner. Because if you can't do that, you're hiding something. If you can't do that, that means that there's something about this person that you feel would not react to you in a positive way, that does not have, I think that you're lacking transparency. You're lacking something essential that would allow you to be yourself, to be comfortable in a relationship where you feel like you have to hide or tiptoe or lie or whatever it is in order to just get by.
So do you have some tools that you use to help build trust?
I've been saying, for me, communicating is a big thing. And even for myself, when I am upset, and we're not even just talking about like an event that might happen or that where you're angry, upset, but just when you feel like, you want to express yourself, however, good, bad, even good things. Sometimes I get like super excited or from negative emotion or positive emotion, I get tongue tied. And I stutter a lot. And sometimes I get like emotionally exuberant, I guess you would say. Some people might call it yelling or raising my voice. So it's easier for me to write things. And so I write letters, or, if I feel like I can't express myself in a way that I can be heard through my voice, I do it in writing. Because also when I write, it also allows me to think about what it is that I want to say and maybe do some editing here and there. And so that when I present my ideas and my thoughts and my feelings, it has been thought out. It's not like a first reaction kind of thing.
Yes, very true.
What about you? What do you guys do?
When we're angry,
happy, whatever it is that where you want to express yourself to your partner and you may not feel like you're able to do so for whatever reason verbally.
So I have tried the letter writing, and sometimes it's been very helpful. It seems to be something that he has been willing to do more recently. I had some ouch moments. I had to read some things that didn't sit well with me, but I still say it was effective because had he said them to me while we were communicating, I would have reacted rather than respond in a positive way. So by reading the letter, I had to sit with it. I had to take it in and deal with it, not in that moment. I have in the past, when I was angry or challenged in communicating, I would blow up. I'm a work in progress. It doesn't happen as often, But in such a huge effort to try to find a place where we can communicate effectively, I have learned how to be more quiet in the moment. Didn't want to. Didn't want to, but it's just something that I'm learning to do until I can figure out what else might work. Your hands are,
Yeah,
yeah.
I have a question. So you say that you've learned to be more quiet in the moment, and you're quiet in the moment times. What is it that you're doing? Are you just sitting? Are you thinking? Are you listening and hearing?
I am one trying to control my temper. I'm also, and every situation is different. I'm trying to control my temper and my anger in that moment. I'm trying not to say the first thing that pops in my head because it could be damaging. I'm trying to maybe reassess how this could have played out differently and what my part in it was. Maybe I need to come back with an apology. Maybe I just need to just leave the topic alone for a little bit. So there's a lot going on in that quiet time because ultimately you want to be able to communicate, but you also want peace in your space. You want peace in your space. And so sometimes you just gotta, I don't know if anybody is a Cosby Show fan. When Elvin throws his hands up, he knows not to say anything. Sometimes one of those where just throw your hands up and, just leave it alone for a minute. Kim smiling.
I don't know. I mean, I'm a pretty verbal communicator, so I do a lot of talking and listening. I mean, I also think we show our care and also affection by doing things like for the partner or doing things in the relationship. But I also, honestly, I think if we're talking about strengthening our relationships, there's so much more to strengthening our relationships than like how we communicate in or through conflict. And I'm hoping that maybe we can get to some of those things.
Yes, we can.
Let me ask a question though.
Okay.
And maybe it's going to lead right back to the same thing. So I think last week when we talked, Tara, you talked about how you would walk away in your earlier years. You would just walk away. And I said that my other tends to do that because he thinks he's keeping the peace for that moment. He'll come back to it. And of course, I want to address it in that moment. And I'm learning, I feel like the way he apologizes is not going to come right out and say, hey, I was wrong. I apologize. Not always, but it'll be an act of kindness, so to speak. Hey, let's go to dinner, or hey, let's go do this, or hey, sometimes I need to hear you say, I apologize. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that.
Mm-hmm.
Is it okay that I recognize how he apologizes? I know you ladies are going to say that that's an individual thing, but just overall, I wonder how many people would be thinking, no, be a man, say I messed up or say I apologize. Or if you come to know your partner and this is how he does it, you accept that. It's just like knowing your partner's love language.
When you were speaking, that's the exact thought that came into my head. Is it okay? Yes, it's okay. But if you want those words, I'm sorry, I apologize, then you need to let that be known that I recognize that you are now coming to me in a softer manner. You want to go out to dinner. You want to like hug on me. You want to do these acts of kindness, which are all great steps for togetherness and for showing your appreciation and gratitude in a relationship. But if you want that apology, yeah, make it known that you want that apology. Yes, I accept all these things. I recognize that this is what you mean when you do these things for me. But my need is to hear you say those words to me as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I need you to do that for me.
Yeah, because saying I apologize lets me know that you acknowledge me, you acknowledge the issue, you acknowledge how we got to this place where an apology was even necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But to do all these other acts of kindness for me makes me wonder, is this particular one an actual apology, or did you just sweep under the rug what just happened? Because if you don't apologize, I'm not clear that you understand what just took place.
Yeah. As Kimberly said, there is a lot to these stronger relationships. There is obviously communication and building trust, but there are also the other things like showing gratitude, showing appreciation, spending time together. That being said, part of what we're talking about though, for some people, in order to appreciate these other things or to get to these other things, you have to have that thing where we talked about that I language. I love it when you bring me flowers after we've had an argument and we want to make things work.
Yeah.
I love it when you do that, but I also need this to make me feel better.
I think it's true that in all of our relationships, we don't get all of the things that we need, right? I think it's very rare to get everything we need in every relationship. And so the question is this a need that I can have unfulfilled? If I have so for example, if I need you to verbalize an apology and you're not going to verbalize an apology, can this be an unfulfilled need for me? Right. And that's good, like what the actual issue is. I think it's going to be different for other people. But I think it's realistic to think that we're not going to get all of our needs met. And then the decision is, can I live with not having this particular need met?
Right.
Absolutely. Right. And that's why I think I start off saying, like, when you ask the question, is it okay? If that's something that you can live with, then yes, it's okay because it's what works in your relationship. But the fact that you're asking that question leads me to believe that it's not okay for you because you want to hear those words. You recognize that these other things are ways that he tries to build a relationship. He tries to strengthen or fix the relationship. But a part of you is still unsatisfied and you're holding back or keeping things in the back of your head because you did not hear those words. And if, I'm sorry. And if part of what he is trying to do is to get you back into a good place or to get you into a good place, and you've expressed to him, yes, I love it when you do this, but not I want, but I need for you to actually say the words, not just show the actions, but to say the words. Then that's something that you should express.
Listening to both of you, I realize that there have been apologies. We're talking about, almost 20 years. There's been apologies. But I realize in listening to you both that because I know that his actions are somewhat of an apology, it's really not, how do I want to say? It's not really as big of a need as I thought it was.
Okay.
You both kind of, I guess, helped me think it through. And I guess I answered my own question. If you know that this is his way of apologizing, and I guess not just speaking to me, but even to the listeners, if you know your partner and this is his way of doing it and you accept that way and it works for you, then it works for you.
Yeah. Right. What I will point out, though, is that what you said was when he does this, it's somewhat of an apology. Either you accept it as an apology or not. There's no somewhat because when you throw the somewhat in there, you are perhaps, I don't want to say devaluing it, but you are qualifying it in some way.
I don't know how to express. I say somewhat because of how we define apology. An apology is verbal. It's saying I'm sorry. That's how I see an apology. But I'm realizing that an apology may not come in that form. We want it to be. We want to pick up the phone and say, hey, Tara, I did such and such thing. I'm sorry. I apologize. Right? But instead of doing that, I may send you flowers. That may be my way of apologizing. And it's up to you whether or not you accept that as an apology if you know that that was it. So I guess for me, that's why I said somewhat, because it wasn't verbal.
I understand that. I get what you're saying, but I just wanted to let you know that what I picked up on is that when you, like I said, when you use that somewhat, You are kind of qualifying it. And so if you know that this is his way of apologizing and you accept that as his apology, then you don't say it's somewhat of an apology.
Because
You say that he apologized and you accept it as such. And then you
right.
don't have to wonder or be disappointed when you don't get the words that you thought you needed, but you didn't actually get.
Okay. So for everyone listening, recognize the way your partner apologizes and decide whether or not that is acceptable. Is that what we're saying?
Pretty much, yes.
All right.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay. And that's, to me, because Kim, we mentioned it, that is somewhat of a compromise, right? It may not come in the form that I expect it, but I can tweak my expectations and accept the way that he does it.
Yes.
Or Tara does it, or Kim does it, or whoever's sending the apology.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we talked about the communication. We talked a little bit about spending time together, showing appreciation for your partner. And that's, just easy everyday things that you can do. Like you mentioned, the acts of kindness that he does, saying thank you, verbal affirmations or whatever it is that is your, your love language, is your way of showing your partner that you care, that you love them, and just doing like little things to keep things exciting or fresh, not always doing this, okay, you can do the same things all you want to, but just throw it in like some.
I know Tara keep the conversation positive. She's trying to keep this on a positive note, but we are talking about communication. Isn't it hard though to do those acts of kindness, continue those acts of kindness, or even receive them when the lines of communication are so just not where they should be?
I think it is hard, yeah.
Okay. It's difficult.
It's difficult, but sometimes I think that it's not necessarily linear. So I can be upset and not want to talk and then get a hug, like, come here, give me a hug. And that hug can release some things. I mean, that's necessarily an act of kindness, but it's a closeness. It's a sharing of closeness and just letting the person know that you still care. It's an important part of connection, I think, for me.
And that's where I struggle. So maybe this is part 3, but he is a very affectionate person. And it doesn't matter what the issue is, where the communication fell off, what's going on. He's hardly ever that angry that he doesn't still show acts of kindness or whatever. I'm that person. If I'm not communicating and I'm angry, I'm not trying to show no acts of love. I'm sorry. So I need work in that area. But you're right. If you love this person, and there's a disagreement or something going on, it really should not change how you treat that person because the love is still there. But it does for me. I'm sorry.
Don't be sorry. It's what it is, right?
Kim's head is tilting. So Kim, what you got to say?
My head is tilting because I just feel like I don't know. I want to pick apart some of these things and I can't figure out where I'm feeling things are conflating. I do think I think it's probably true. If I love someone, when I love someone, right, them doing something that annoys me or frustrates me or angers me doesn't mean that I stop loving that person. It's also true though that when I don't feel respected and heard and cared for in a relationship, I am less interested in doing some of those things that build intimacy in a relationship.
Yes.
And less willing to do those.
Yes.
Well, yes, and less willing. You have to be willing to do it. I'm not saying you'll force a hug on somebody or accept one if you don't want it. But for me, even if I'm upset, I know I still love him and I want to be close to him. Even in my anger, I still want that hug.
That is sweet.
And still want to give that hug that would bring comfort.
That is really special.
And it's worked for us. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But you guys, this discussion really reminds me of several passages in the Bible that offer wisdom on how we can nurture our relationships. There are quite a few, but there are 3 that really stood out to me about what I thought we might be talking about today. And I couldn't choose just one, so I actually chose three. They're short.
Mhm.
The first one is Ephesians chapter 4, verse 29, which reminds us to let no corrupting talk come out of our mouths, only such as is good for building up as fits the occasion, that it may give grace to those who hear. And I think that this verse really urges us to, as I'm talking about before, watch our words. Think about how powerful it is to just use your voice, your speech to build up and encourage each other rather than tearing each other down, rather than always point. You talk about, to talk about the things that we appreciate, the things that we love, rather than the things that will hurt us or hurt our partners. So, because I think it's about building a supportive, just being supportive in a relationship and to help your your significant other feel valued and to feel loved. Then there was Proverbs chapter 18, verse 21, which says that death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruits. And that's kind of going back to the same thing about how we use our words when we talk to our partners, when we're being positive rather than negative. We're building each other up rather than tearing each other down. And it highlights just how much weight I think our words carry. What we say can really either help strengthen our relationships or it can cause a lot of damage. Even if it's something that, especially if it's something that we hear that just really makes us question if the person really cares about us or if they are ashamed of us, if they, find so much fault with us that they don't really want to make this work, or do they really, if they care about me the way they say they do in the good times, if when we're in the bad times, they're saying something completely different. And then the last one was James chapter 1, verse 19 said, "Know this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger." And obviously, I think this teaches us to listen more than we talk, and to be patient and to be calm when it is that we respond. So I think all these pretty much work towards, us building or our active listening skills in order to really understand our partners and also to resolve conflicts peacefully somewhat.
Good stuff. I appreciate those scriptures. I wrote them down.
So as we reach the end of today's episode of Unfiltered Perspectives, we talked about some ways to make our relationships stronger, from better communication to supporting each other. These tips can really, really, really make a difference. Thanks for joining us today. We hope that you found today's episode interesting and helpful. Please share it with others and be sure to tune in for a new episode every Thursday morning. Don't forget to leave a review and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
We'd love to hear from you, especially love to take listener questions. If you have a question that you would like us to address in the podcast, send your questions to unfilteredperspectives@outlook.com. And please let us know if you'd like us to use your name. I'm Kimberly.
I'm Tara.
And I'm Leslie. Once again, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you here next time.